Hello, everybody. Welcome at Shadow at Night for, my voice isn't quite back to normal yet, for June 18th. It's a Wednesday, June the 18th. What's on the menu tonight on the show? Immigration. There is a new poll out that suggests a slim majority of Canadians feel that immigration is still too high, and there's a reason for that, because the Carney government has reduced it, like they said, or will be reducing it, like they said during the election campaign, but when the gas prices go up from $1.35 a liter to $1.80 a liter, everybody screams and shouts and says, that's too high. And so they bring it down to $1.70. Oh, that's better. That's more like it. Well, it's still up 35 cents. That's what's going on with immigration right now. So we're going to talk about that later on in the show. This EV mandate has reappeared on the radar screen from the Liberals, and the Conservatives are fighting that in the House of Commons. Well, the House continues to sit until the end of this week, but why not fight Bill C-5? That's the one that gives Mark Carney complete control over any kind of project that happens in Canada. He can overrule laws, he can just completely ignore them, and he can create new ones without parliamentary oversight. And the Conservatives and Conservative premiers like Scott Moe and Danielle Smith are going along with it. We're going to talk about that. The big story today, obviously, is what's going on in the Middle East. We know Israel and Iran have been bombing each other left, right, and center for the past week and a half. Will the Americans get involved? And if so, what will happen then? Domestically and internationally, this is all coming up. And then, of course, it's June, so it's Pride Month, and there's a few crazy things that have been going on with that. What is the Great Reset, for those of you that don't know and haven't been able to piece all of this together yet? Now, I'm not saying I have, because who really knows what the end game is here? We think we might know, and then the next day it changes, and the day after it changes again. But we do know some of the things, and we do know the Great Reset is pretty much the entire umbrella over which all of these ridiculous things are happening around us. DEI, trans, climate change, all of that stuff falls under that umbrella. And the Rothschilds. What do we really know about our own history? It's very interesting. We're going to go into that as well. And on the extension tonight, Ken Drysdale of the NCI and Manitoba Stronger Together did a fantastic interview last night with Dr. Jessica Rose, and we're going to put that on the extension tonight. We may wrap up the social media part of the show early tonight because I have a bit of an emergency I have to attend to this evening. I'm not going to go into detail about that, but I do have to take care of something. And so we may wrap up a little bit early tonight. As always, the Shadow at Night live stream is brought to you by CanadaNanoSilver.com.
Silver is amazing. It has several natural health benefits, and it's been used for hundreds of years for health and healing. That's the main reason they made silverware from silver. But seriously, this nano silver from Silverceuticals is the best and safest silver you can find. There are hundreds of studies and reports on it. I've read some of the studies myself, and it's mind-blowing. One of the things that sets Silverceuticals apart is that it washes out of your body in 24 hours. No silver buildup, and no turning blue. And it won't even harm the good bacteria your body needs. It's so effective, they can use very small concentrations of silver, like 10 and 32 parts per million, and still outperform other silvers that have up to 3,000 parts per million. It's safer and more effective at the same time. It is an incredibly small particle that is small enough to work through your body, but big enough not to fall out of suspension. They infuse it into almost all of their products. It works in facial serums, toothpaste, gels, and even gummies that work to help your immune system.
Oh, I like the gummies. CanadaNanoSilver.com, 204-808-9292. If you have any questions for Kevin and Anna, you can give them a call, but go to the website. All of the information is there, including all the research, all the studies, all the testing, and all of the products. CanadaNanoSilver.com. Again, that is CanadaNanoSilver.com. So I was talking on the phone briefly today with our friend Councillor Lisa Robinson of Pickering, Ontario, and she told me that they're going to suspend her pay again next Monday. She's been dropping videos left and right on YouTube lately, and here's the most recent one.
Moment to speak directly to you about something I've been standing firmly against from the very beginning. Diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, or DEI. I'm very pleased to see that Doug Ford and the provincial government are now walking back some of these dangerous DEI policies through Bill 33. This bill is a step in the right direction. It begins to reverse the politicized hiring and admission practices that prioritize identity over qualifications, merit, or ability. For years now, I've been warning people we should never be hiring anyone based on the color of their skin, their sexual preferences, or their religious beliefs. That's not equality. That's discrimination in a different form. In fact, I was the only councillor to oppose adopting the DEI within the city of Pickering. I've also personally tried to bring forward a notice of motion to remove DEI from our local government structure. Unfortunately, not one other member of council was willing to second it. Even after I mentioned they're shutting DEI down around the world because of the division it has caused. Here's what Bill 33 does. It reasserts merit-based hiring and admissions across Ontario's public institutions. It reduces government funding for programs that force ideological hiring quotas. And it puts power back where it belongs, with parents, with voters, and with institutions that serve all people equally, not based on identity. We are finally starting to see common sense take hold again here in Canada. But the fight isn't over. I need your voices, your support, and your courage to keep pushing forward. Let's keep standing for fairness, for merit, for integrity, and for a future where every person is judged, not by the color of their skin, their religious beliefs, or their sexuality, but by what they can do. I am Councillor Lisa Robinson, the People's Councillor, and I work for you, the people. So if you believe in honesty, transparency, and a leadership that puts truth before politics and the people before power, then stand with me and follow me. Share the truth and help take back our city one voice at a time. Thanks for watching, and God bless.
Yes, go follow her on YouTube, Councillor Lisa Robinson. She joins the show tomorrow night, by the way, and I'm looking forward to it. It's been a long time since she's been on. Hello, Karen, watching on Facebook tonight. Darcy is watching from the Yukon on X tonight. Welcome to the show, Darcy. Bill, hello, how are you? Sue is watching from Ontario. Edna, hello. Dan Ross is watching tonight from Manitoba. Hello, Bob in Sudbury. Wallace is watching tonight. Choppy in and out. The feed's not great. What the heck? Maybe you're in a bad spot. Christine is watching from Manola, Manitoba. Hello, Kathy in New Brunswick. Freedom Ray watching on YouTube tonight from Northern Ontario. Roseanne, Carol, Greg, Dave, Frank. All you guys, don't forget to like and share. Let's get this out there to as many people as we possibly can. On Rumble, we've got Notable, Patricia, Esky Dogs, Steve's 11, Lone Arnie, Nutsy, You Go Girl 123, Bailey 242424. Don't forget again, like and share, guys. Get this out to as many people as you possibly can. All right, you guys know how I feel about the left-wing corporate media. Hit and miss, mostly miss, but sometimes, occasionally, they do put out something that's worth watching or reading. For example, this story that comes from the BBC, Trump's Iran dilemma exposes bitter split in the president's circle. And yes, comedian Dave Smith was going on and on and on and on about this. I think it was on Chicks on the Right, or at least they were talking about it. And it seems as though Trump's coalition may fall apart if he decides he wants to go into this war against Iran with Israel. The dilemma of whether the U.S. should join Israel in attacking Iran or stay out of the offensive altogether has exposed divisions among Donald Trump's supporters. I may do it, I may not do it. Trump said today whether the U.S. would join the conflict by targeting Iranian nuclear sites. Trump, now again, there's a lot of debate as to whether or not these nuclear sites even exist. The possibility he might draw the U.S. into another foreign entanglement has pitted the isolationist and hawkish wings of his party bitterly against one another. Among those that have expressed doubt about Iran's nuclear plans are Trump's Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, who in March, we played this last night, I think, on the show, testified before Congress that while Iran's enriched uranium was at an all-time high, experts did not believe it was working on a nuclear weapon. On June 10th, just 3 days before Israeli strikes on Iran began, Gabbard also posted a video in which he warned the political elite warmongers were carelessly fomenting fear and tensions that risked putting the world on the brink of nuclear annihilation. Gabbard's video and prior comments reportedly opened a rift between her and Trump, who U.S. news outlet Politico reported became incensed at the video. "I don't care what she said," Trump told reporters when asked about her earlier comments before Congress. "I think they were very close to having a weapon." She later accused the media of taking her comments out of context. I don't think they did, telling CNN that she was on the same page as Trump. I don't think she was. Gabbard was not alone among Republicans criticizing potential U.S. involvement in the conflict. Yesterday, Thomas Massie, Republican congressman from Kentucky, sided with Democrats to introduce a bill that would block Trump from engaging U.S. forces in unauthorized hostilities with Iran without congressional approval, and yet they believe in the war in Ukraine. This is not our war. Even if it were, Congress must decide such matters according to our Constitution, Massey posted on X. Several proponents of Trump's America First doctrine pointed out that he vowed to keep the U.S. out of forever wars, such as those that led to the deaths of thousands of U.S. troops in Afghanistan and Iraq. So if they do decide to go into this, will anybody follow them, and who will join with Iran in the Middle East in opposing them? Here's the Ayatollah.
Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, rejected US President Donald Trump's demand for unconditional surrender on Wednesday. It came as thousands fled intensified Israeli airstrikes in the Iranian capital, Tehran, prompting Turkey to tighten security at the border it shares with Iran. In a recorded television speech, Khamenei said Americans, quote, should know that any US military intervention will undoubtedly be accompanied by irreparable damage.
Iran's got a lot of trouble.
Trump has veered from proposing a swift diplomatic end to the war to suggesting the United States might join it. In social media posts on Tuesday, he mused about killing Khamenei and demanded Iran's unconditional surrender. A source familiar with internal discussions said Trump and his team were considering joining Israel in strikes against Iranian nuclear sites, among other options. Israel's military told Iranians to leave parts of the capital for their safety while it struck targets. It said 50 Israeli jets had struck around 20 targets in Tehran overnight, including sites producing raw materials, components, and manufacturing systems for missiles. The prospect that Trump could bring the United States into the war has raised the stakes since he abandoned a G7 summit and met his security officials in Washington on Tuesday. Iran's ambassador to the United Nations in Geneva, Ali Bahraini, told a news conference he already saw the US as complicit in what Israel is doing.
If we come to the conclusion that the United States is directly involved in attacks against Iran, we will start responding to the United States.
Iran has been exploring options for leverage, including veiled threats to restrict access to the Gulf through the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most important shipping artery for oil. Tehran has in the past threatened to close the strait, but has never followed through. While inside Iran, the biggest attacks since the war with Iraq in the 1980s have wiped out an echelon of senior leadership. Authorities have allowed fewer images of destruction to circulate than in the early days of the bombing, and a ban on filming by the public has been imposed. In Israel, sirens rang out, warning people of Iranian retaliatory missile strikes. At Ramat Gan city train station east of Tel Aviv, people were lying on city-supplied mattresses lined along the floor. Among them, Tamar Vaiz, prepared for her second night in the makeshift shelter, alongside her 2 children.
I feel scared and overwhelmed, especially because I live in the densely populated area that Iran is seeming to target. And our city has very, very old buildings without shelters and without safe spaces.
Okay, so let me take that off for a second here. So why is all this going on? Why is Trump going against what he believed in firmly for years and years and years, and even spoke vehemently and passionately about during the 2015 Republican candidates debate, especially with Jeb Bush right here? Watch this.
They lied.
Okay.
They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass destruction. Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake, all right? Now, you can take it any way you want, and it took Jeb Bush, if you remember at the beginning of his announcement, when he announced for president, took him 5 days. He went back. It was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. Took him 5 days before his people told him what to say, and he ultimately said it was a mistake. The war in Iraq, we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives. We don't even have it. Iran is taking over Iraq with the second largest oil reserves in the world. Obviously, it was a mistake.
So
George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
But so you still think he should be impeached?
I think it's my turn, isn't it?
You do whatever you want. You call it whatever you want. I want to tell you, they lied.
Okay.
They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass
Okay.
destruction.
All right.
And now he says Iran has gotten dangerously close to nuclear weapons? Even though Tulsi Gabbard said 2 months ago, no, they haven't. The experts say no. So what's really going on over there? I saw made a post a couple of minutes ago that the U.S. are warmongers. I would suggest, yeah, some of them are warmongers, but who are they being goaded by? Chris Sky has got an interesting opinion on this. He posted this earlier today. I'm going to play this for you now. And again, I want to reiterate to all of the YouTube and Facebook algorithms that this is only an opinion and not to be taken for fact. 3 minutes of Chris Sky.
Do I really want to do this one? Yeah, I think I do. So, this is going to make a lot of sense once everybody gets this. They're going to understand the entire situation going on in the world. What are the true origins of the Jeffrey Epstein files? What is their true purpose? Who has control of them? And why is it never going to come to light? And how does it affect the world today? Let's see if I can do all this in 3 minutes. Okay. The origin of the Epstein files is from a group called Mega Group. Mega Group was a brainchild of 3 people: Steven Spielberg, the director; Charles Bronfman, the head of the Bronfman family, the richest and most powerful family in Canada, made their money from prohibition and alcohol, owned Seagram's alcohol, which they sold for almost $40 billion. The grandchildren who are still in jail for running a child trafficking sex cult, that Bronfman family. Steven Spielberg, the Hollywood director, and Les Wexman, yes, the owner of Victoria's Secret. They created what was called Mega Group, which was supposed to be a talent organization, international, to get the cream of the crop kids for Hollywood, which we now know was for human trafficking, ritualistic murder, organ harvesting, rape, etc. And then they put in charge to run Mega Group, which, by the way, was also an official pro-Israel lobby like AIPAC, and also tied directly to the Mossad, Israeli intelligence, and we'll get to that. But guess what? Guess who they hired to run it? A man by the name of Jeffrey Epstein. He even had signing authority for Wexman. So you have this unholy alliance of the Victoria's Secret head, the richest and most powerful Canadian family, and Steven Spielberg, Hollywood director. And now they have a network that they're building up all over the world, and every single person that either diddled children, took a bribe, or even cheated on their spouse with a significant other, they put you in this little black book. And every single person in that book is now controlled by the Mossad. You are basically a spy for Israel. Doesn't matter who you are or where you were before. Now, who's in this book? This started since 1991. So think of how many hundreds or thousands of people are in this book. And we're talking Democrats, Republicans, judges, lawyers, congressmen, senators, cops, celebrities. So do you think any of those people want it coming out? Absolutely not. And they're the most powerful people in the world. And you think the Mossad, the most powerful intelligence agency, is going to give up their little black book, an entire list of operatives that they have all around the world? Absolutely not. And that is why Israel can blackmail every politician in every country around the friggin' world. And that's why those tiles are never going to come out.
I believe there are some that are untouchable. Some people who have never done the things that would get them photographed and extorted. Somebody like Tucker Carlson, for example. God-fearing man, he's a Christian, loves his family. At least that's what we know about him, but I believe all of those things to be true. And here he is talking to Ted Cruz. This is one of the most interesting excerpts of the 1 hour, 30-minute interview that Tucker did with Senator Cruz. Watch.
Asking about your allegation and the Prime Minister of Israel's allegation that Iran is trying to murder the president.
Killing terrorists is a good thing. Killing people who are trying to murder Americans is a good thing. Because if you're America first, you want to protect America. And so killing Osama bin Laden was a fantastic day for the world.
But you don't really believe that they're trying to murder Trump, or you?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Then why aren't you calling for military action against Tehran right now?
Because they're not very effective. In terms of hitmen, their hitmen are not very effective. I do think...
So they're hitmen, but not the bad kind, the efficient kind?
No,
what are you saying?
They're a weak country who is on its knees, and I think we need to...
Then why are we so afraid of them? Why are they the biggest threat if they're a weak country that's on its knees?
Because they're trying...
I'm trying to keep track.
They're trying to develop... Be a little less snarky.
I know, you're right. That is a problem that I have. I'm sorry.
I got to play that last part again. It's too good.
Are they the biggest threat if they're a weak country that's on its knees?
Because they're trying...
I'm trying to keep track.
They're trying to develop... Be a little less snarky.
I know, you're right. That is a problem that I have. I'm sorry.
I think Cruz is being extorted. I think many of them are. The war hawks mostly are being extorted, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's Iran, whether it's anybody else. And probably Donald Trump too. Either that or they've got something on him. We don't know exactly what it is, but for him to flip around like this, remember, he was also nearly assassinated a couple of times too, that we know of. Maybe there are more instances of it. I don't know. And why are they after Christians so much? What is it about Christians? Candace Owens had an ex-CIA member on her show a couple of months ago. This is an interesting excerpt also.
Christians. Remember, the Soviet Union made a statement that we could control all of our entire population except the Christians. And they had to put them in prison and in gulags. And I remember 1994 when I was in the CIA, we ordered into a conference room. We all filed in. There's about 30 of us. And our division chief starts off by saying, now don't get mad at me. I'm just the messenger. This comes down from the director of the CIA. You can no longer say Merry Christmas in any CIA office space. You cannot have a manger scene on your desk or on your door, or you will face administrative penalties. And the sad part was only two of us, our jaws dropped. Like, what? And the CIA was actively against Christians, and they used DEI as a method to suppress them. And I remember it was Christmas Eve, and I walked out. I thought about this, prayed about this overnight, and I said, oh, no, you don't. So I walked out on New Year's Eve, and I turned around to everybody, and I said, good night, and by the way, Merry Christmas. I'm like, there is a line you don't cross. Well, there was an outrage from the CIA populace, and as evil people always do, when they got resistance, they backed off and said, well, never mind, But it has been Christianity, because the Christians are the only ones that will not answer to tyranny. We believe in God and a higher power, and we will not be manipulated by a tyrannical regime. And that's why Christians are despised around the world, including in this previous administration, my goodness. And going back to Obama, how they attacked Christians and eliminated the religious freedom post at the Department of State, and on and on and on it went. But that's the reason.
And Christianity, of course, continues to be attacked. in Canada. Churches are burning. Now, nothing lately, at least that we've heard of, but how many churches have been burned in the last 3 years? Christian churches? 200, 300, all across the country. All right, let's change gears now. Let's talk about what's going on here in Canada from the left-wing corporate CTV. Ministers defend Carney's nation-building bill, this is C5, and efforts for Parliament to expedite it despite objections. Who's objecting? The Conservatives seem to be going along with this. Mark Carney's Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs is defending the nation-building trade barrier and major projects bill and the Liberals' efforts to expedite its passage by Canada Day amid objections. We hope this legislation can be adopted expeditiously. Intergovernmental Affairs and One Canadian Economy Minister Dominic LeBlanc told senators yesterday. LeBlanc is the sponsor of Bill C5, which the Liberals have coined the One Canadian Economy Bill. I don't like the sound of that. He was testifying as part of a Senate-wide pre-study of the legislation. Pre-studies are a way for senators to begin considering legislation before the bill is formally passed in the House and are often used when there's an intention to pass policy quickly. This comes as MPs agreed by a vote of 305 to 30 on Monday to pass a government motion to expedite the legislation's passage, putting Bill C5 on a course towards clearing the House of Commons by the end of the week. The Conservatives voted in favor. I don't get it. While the Liberals, typical dance partners from the last minority parliament, the Bloc, New Democrats, and Greens voted against. As a result of the motion passing, the House Transport, Infrastructure, and Communities Committee will sit for a few hours on Tuesday and then potentially burn the midnight oil tonight to complete the study clause by clause of the bill. Then MPs will have a limited window for debate at report stage and third reading, with the motion stating the House cannot adjourn on Friday until Bill C5 passes into the Senate. I think the Prime Minister and our government made a compelling case to Canadians. This particular piece of legislation was what the moment required. This means, well, let's get down to this part here. What's contentious about Bill C5? It's titled An Act to Enact the Free Trade and Labor Mobility in Canada Act, and the Building Canada Act spans fewer than 20 pages. It proposes to recognize provincial regulations with the aim of making it easier to improve the mobility of goods and services as well as labor. It also seeks to speed up the development of major projects deemed to be in the national interest. Who gets to decide that? It's the provisions proposing to grant cabinet new powers with the intention of centralizing approvals for new natural resource projects that are being heavily criticized as undermining Indigenous rights and environmental protections. There's widespread concern among opponents that if Bill C5 becomes law, projects could be greenlit without adequate consultation or parliamentary oversight. Remember, this is all up to the Liberals. They're the government. Do you trust them with this much power? I don't. Sparking further ire is the Liberal push to condense the debate on and study of the legislation when the bill was unveiled just 2 weeks before MPs' scheduled summer break. Carney said if Parliament needs to sit longer, it should sit longer in order to get it passed. Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Rebecca Alty testified alongside LeBlanc Tuesday. She was pressed to respond to testimony senators heard the day prior from Indigenous leaders who want to see the process slowed down. They included Inuit Taprit Kanatami President Natan Obed, who implored senators to take additional time to consider this legislation. They are supposed to be the House of sober second thought, considering the serious consequences of hastily passing this legislation through Parliament. A more nuanced, considerate approach would allow Canada to develop clear pathways to advance nation-building projects, Obed said. As to address the concerns about upholding the rights of Indigenous peoples, Alty asserted the bill will not infringe on existing obligations. Of course it can, but he says it won't. Do you believe him? I don't. Now, what about this one? Canadians oppose this Liberal 2030 prohibition of new gas and diesel vehicles. You guys are well aware about this, right? Canada is set to outlaw new gas and diesel-powered passenger vehicle sales by 2035. That's the story from a couple of months ago that people just kind of went to sleep on. But they were talking about it today in the House of Commons, and here's a clip from that.
Liberal government is doubling down on its insane ban on gas-powered vehicles. The latest Liberal overreach kicks in next year, and soon your favorite car, truck, and van will be illegal. But this mandate is already driving up prices. The average price of a new car is $67,000. Used cars are approaching $40,000, and this Liberal mandate will add an additional $20,000 per vehicle. They've already priced working Canadians out of the housing market. Why are they pricing working Canadians out of the ability to buy a vehicle as well?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, first let's start with the facts, which is there is no ban on gas-powered vehicles. But more to the point, let's also say, once again, we're seeing the Conservatives talking down one of our most important industries, employing hard-working auto workers in our country at the very moment that we're facing tariff threats from the United States. I find it rich that they're choosing to take this position instead of talking up a growing and important industry. We stand with our auto workers.
Leader of the Opposition.
There absolutely is a ban. It starts to come into effect next year, and it will absolutely devastate the auto sector here in Canada. The auto sector is already under fire from unjustified U.S. tariffs and the PM's inability to get a deal, but GM, Ford are all saying that this ban will kill jobs. In fact, a new report says that this ban on gas-powered vehicles will kill 90,000 auto jobs. Wow. Instead of sending even more jobs to the U.S., why not end the ban on gas-powered vehicles and let Canadians decide what kind of vehicle they want to buy?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, it's nice to hear that they're finally recognizing that we're talking about an industry that's facing unjustified tariffs from the United States. But let's also talk about how our auto sector is important. We need to support it in this moment. It's creating good-paying union jobs in our country. An EV standard actually makes sure that new electric vehicles are available to Canadians. They're cheaper to operate, they're cheaper on upkeep, and Canadians want to be able to have access.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
You don't have to allow Canadians to buy one type of vehicle by banning their ability to buy the ones that they actually want. You know, this is raising a lot of questions. Canadians, auto workers, Ford, GM, they all don't want the EV mandate, but the Prime Minister is intent on pushing it through. Why? Well, right before becoming Prime Minister, he was chair of Brookfield, and he advocated for a ban on gas-powered cars. Brookfield is heavily invested in the EV supply chain, yet this Prime Minister refuses to reveal his financial interests or self-admitted conflicts. Isn't it true that this isn't about the environment, this is about the bottom line for Brookfield?
The Honourable Minister for Artificial Intelligence.
We're in a trade war launched by the United States that's targeting our auto workers and our auto sector. Make no mistake, we will fight for every job and every worker. We have invested in the auto sector, including the EV sector, to build good jobs in places like St. Thomas, where the Amino Corp is employing people. This government will always invest in workers and make sure that the auto industry is growing, resilient, and successful.
Why is it then that all of the big auto manufacturers are slowing down their EV manufacturing? No demand. Right. They're also, by the way, the Liberals bringing in these rebate checks to make it easier to afford an EV, even though the minister says that it's cheaper to run an EV vehicle, cheaper to operate. Does she know what a battery replacement costs in an electric vehicle? And they tend to blow up all the time, especially in extremely cold weather. I've heard anywhere between $23,000 and $29,000 for a new battery for an EV. But of course, they're cheaper to operate. What dreamland are they living in, I wonder? And also, Andrew Scheer brought up in that little back and forth from the House of Commons that Mark Carney still has not made a deal with Donald Trump in the United States regarding these tariffs, which nobody seems to be talking about anymore. Where's the elbows up crowd gone to? They're quiet. Here's Yves Francois Blanchette, the leader of the Bloc Québécois.
We are seeing that there has been no action on what seemed to be a crisis. Mr. Carney said this himself. No crisis, no Carney. I mean, after the election, he could have done something else, but he didn't talk about the crisis anymore. And the only result we're seeing is Mr. Trump's team meeting with Carney's team to try and save face. We'll get together and talk again in 30 days. Mr. Carney made some extremely costly commitments, legislation to protect the borders, which raises questions of ethics, I might add. And he abandoned the counter tariff supposedly because he could reach an agreement with Mr. Trump before the G7. And what he actually secured, without going back on any of the concessions that he'd already made, was 30 days. You know, getting 30 days from Mr. Trump is easy. He probably would have made the offer himself. So I'm sorry to have to say this, but Mr. Carney got nothing.
Mr. Carney got nothing, at least so far. Do you have confidence that Mr. Carney will get anywhere with Donald Trump? I mean, Trump left the G7. He has other fish to fry. Maybe there could have been an opportunity to make a deal. Oh, sorry. Carney did make a deal. He made it with Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, who kind of snuck in after Trump left in Kananaskis and got $2 billion more from us. And of course, some more war supplies, like we have any to give anymore. Let's get back to the EV mandate for just a second. Do you have a classic car club in your city or town? Because I'll tell you, every Sunday night in Winnipeg, we've got the Winnipeg cruising culture crowd that goes out. They used to be in my part of town Sunday nights starting at 6 o'clock, and they would bomb up and down Portage Avenue with their 1950s and 60s and 70s classic cars. They wouldn't be honking their horns or anything, but their engines are revving, and they're all sitting in a parking lot of this big mall, this big strip mall, 3 or 4 blocks from where I live. So you could walk around the cars for a couple of hours before they started the cruise, and you could check them out, and they're all gas-powered vehicles. Of course they are, right? I'm wondering if the people who own classic cars and the people who run clubs like the Winnipeg Cruising Culture Club know about this EV mandate. Do they even know that the cars they are proud to show off and drive around weekly in their city and town are going to be outlawed by 2035? Well, that's not completely true. They won't be outlawed. They'll be grandfathered in. So you're not going to be able to buy a gas-powered vehicle by 2015. And by the way, next year, 20% of vehicles sold in Canada must be EVs. And then it goes up year by year by year until 2035, when gas-powered vehicles will not be allowed to be sold at all. I'm not sure if you can sell used gas-powered vehicles privately, but I doubt that there'll be any private sales by 2035 because CBDC is coming, but that's a whole different thing. So I'm wondering, you can own a gas-powered vehicle in 2035, but good luck finding any gasoline for it or parts in case something goes wrong. That'll be it. Maybe you can get them on the black market using some other kind of currency. I don't know. I don't know what our life will be like in 2035, but they're certainly showing us signs, and it doesn't look great, does it? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here is a man, appears to be middle-aged, maybe mid-50s, maybe late 50s, trying to get into a little girl's change room with a bikini top on. I think this was in Florida. He was stopped by a vigilant mother. Let's watch this.
Hey, I'm leaving, so you'll have court.
If you want to practice your transition, you don't do it at a young kid's softball field.
I think we need to see that again, so let's go ahead and watch that again.
Oh, you're not, dude. Hey, I'm leaving, so you'll have court.
If you want to practice your transition, you don't do it at a young kid's softball field.
All right, we're going to get more into this trans thing in just a couple of stories from now, because there is a trans TikToker with something like 500,000 followers named Lily Tino, who's facing possible legal action from a woman he caught on camera while taking photos in a female restroom at Disney World. So good. Very good. In the meantime, there's a couple of other things we need to cover. Slim majority of Canadians found reduced immigration levels still too high, according to government polling. So let's have a look at this story. There's our immigration minister again. Rosanna Dana. Shortly after cutting immigration levels, the Federal Immigration Department heard through government-funded polling that a slight majority of this is what I find so disturbing, that it's only a slight majority of Canadians still found this year's number too high. Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada commissioned the survey as part of its annual tracking of public sentiment towards immigration and reported it publicly as part of the government's disclosures on its public opinion research. The survey was done last November, followed the federal government's announcement that it would reduce the number of permanent residents by nearly 100,000 in 2025. The target was set at 395,000, down from 485 in 2024. The survey found that 54% of Canadians said there were too many immigrants coming to Canada. Another 34% said they felt the number was fine, according to the report. When informed that Canada plans to admit 395,000 immigrants as permanent residents in 2025, 52% that it was too many. 37% said that's about the right number. 5% that's too few, they said. When informed that 395,000 immigrants is roughly 20% fewer than Canada planned to admit in 2024, 44% feel this is too many still, which is not a majority. 39% said this number is about right. And 13% said that is too few. I've got a video from yesterday I want to pull up here. I didn't get a chance to play it last night. I'm going to play it tonight. Let's see if I could find it quickly here. Here it is here. This is 1 minute and 10 seconds. I'm not sure who this guy is, but he's telling Canadians that they will not recognize their country within 3 years. I think it's already kind of happened, but watch this.
In 20 years from now on, you are not going to fit in Canadian society. Let me put things in perspective. Imagine going to a mall in Cambodia, in a city in Cambodia. Everybody around you is going to be looking at you like you're a foreigner. You're going to be a foreigner there, and you're not going to fit in that mall. In 20 years, you will be exactly same in Canada. You will go to a city in Canada, you'll go to a mall, and you're not going to fit in that mall because everybody around you is brown. And they will be looking at you like you are the outlier. You know what I'm saying? You are going to be the outlier. And you guys did it to yourself. You know, your hate for Trump was far more important than your own country. In 2025, Canada will welcome far more refugees than it did in 2024 because you guys voted for the same guy, the same party that brought you till 2024. You wanted to extend that 2025 to 2026, 7, and 2028. Okay, this is now irreversible. You can't reverse that. You cannot reverse this. It's beyond. By 2028, it's over.
So let's get back to the Trump Iran thing for just a second. There's been a lot of immigration, legal and illegal, into the United States and Canada for the past, 5 years now. And some people have been worried that a lot of young fighting-aged men, single fighting-aged men, have come into the country illegally. Some from Iran, many from Iran, as a matter of fact. Now, are these people part of some kind of a sleeper cell? And that if Trump decides he wants to join Israel in attacking Iran or any other country in the Middle East for that matter, would these people rise up in the United States and start a domestic war? That's something we talked about a couple of years ago, remember? Canada too, for that matter. It's all very interesting. Here's a story from left-wing corporate Global News, who just fired most of their staff at their radio stations in Ottawa, by the way. Just thought I'd throw that one in. Quebec to jail inmates according to anatomical sex, not gender identity. This is the Quebec Public Safety Minister, Francois Bonnardel. And he looks kind of crazy, but I like the position here. Quebec's public security minister says transgender inmates will be incarcerated according to their anatomical sex, not their identity. Francois Bonnardel says in a statement, the measure is to ensure the safety of all inmates. He says the inmates' bodies will be scanned to determine which detention center they'll be directed to, adding that some accommodations will be possible. Inside jails, transgender inmates will be allowed to identify with the gender of their choice. Good luck with that, though. Bonnardel says the province is providing corrections officers with a guide to educate them on sexual diversity, gender plurality, and the rights of LGBTQ plus people. The Public Security Department says that as of last week, 6 out of 5,400 incarcerated people in Quebec jails identified as transgender. That's a tiny step in the right direction, maybe, right? Okay, here's that story I was talking about. This trans TikToker who, by the way, does speak directly to children. Lily Tino is the name he goes by, is facing possible legal action from woman he caught on camera while taking photos in a female restroom at Disney World. Screw loose some of these people. I would suggest most of these people. These people. Did Shadow just say these people? Don't forget to like and share, guys. Get this out to as many people as possible. The extension starts in 15 minutes at shadowdavis.com. A woman photographed in a female bathroom by an infamous trans-identified TikToker has announced she's considering taking legal action against him for violating her privacy. I do like this story from Redux, by the way. They use the proper gender description. He. Nicholas Sylvan Cantino, known online as Lily Tino, is a transgender content creator, 400,000 followers across social media. Cantino skyrocketed to notoriety after repeatedly filming himself berating frontline staff at restaurants after they accidentally misgendered him. His most viral video on TikTok, which has 39 million views at the time of writing, is a compilation of those incidents where he claims that being called sir, despite looking like a man dressed up in women's clothing, feels like a knife in the heart. Recently, Cantino traveled to Disney World in Florida, where he not only continued his usual content of being misgendered by wait staff, but also decided to inspect and rate a number of the women's bathrooms at the theme park. This included taking selfies of himself just outside one of the stalls where many women were present. His experiences using the bathrooms ranged from 9-10 because he was supposedly told he looked cute to 2 out of 10 because he was given a weird look. In another video, he bragged about peeing standing up in one of the bathrooms. 10 out of 10 women's bathroom experience for trans women would recommend, he commented. A number of women were visible in the photos that he posted last week, resulting in a mass of comments on TikTok where people noted that taking pictures of women in public bathrooms without their consent, then posting it online is illegal in the state of Florida and calling it a clear violation of privacy. Listen to this witness.
Has personally witnessed Lily Tino in a Magic Kingdom women's restroom. This is my take on the situation. I was at Magic Kingdom several years ago in one of the female restrooms. As I came out of the stall with my daughter, I noticed what appeared to be a non-transitioned trans woman. I'm not really sure what. Lily stood out like a sore thumb in the restroom. There were several people noticeably disturbed by their presence because it was very clear that they do not belong there. What I observed was a lot of standing around. Lily was doing a lot of observing. After they washed their hands, I admittedly kind of stuck around a little bit because it seemed like the older women that were in the bathroom were ready to say something. So I did kind of stick around to see. I have seen a lot of drama at Disney. It does happen. Nothing ended up happening, but what I did notice was that Lily did a lot of idle standing. It was really, at that point in time, no rhyme or reason for them to be there. And in a way, it was almost as if they were in there to make a statement, or in a way hoping that somebody would say something so Lily could be confronted about being in the women's bathroom. Really, nobody ended up actually saying something to Lily about the situation. They did loudly speak to each other in their own group when exiting, so I do believe that Lily heard the comment. They do not belong in the women's bathroom, and I feel truly, as somebody who has personally witnessed them being in the bathroom, and this is, again, before this was ever a thing. This was before I had ever seen anything about it. I didn't even know this person had a social media account. I remember this situation vividly because it stuck out for me at Disney. Once Lily became a viral situation is when I realized, wow, as somebody who lives 30 minutes from Disney World, I have seen that person at Disney World before. This person has no business in the female bathroom. And at this point in time, I feel like this person has no business at Disney World in a whole. I don't think that he's maliciously trying to harm anybody. The situation is extremely inappropriate, and the fact that Disney has not handled it, knowing that many people have reached out, is also concerning as a pass holder myself who brings 2 small children to the park several times a month. That's my take on it. Have a great day.
Thank you for speaking out. There was a very important Supreme Court ruling in the United States today that states do, in fact, have the constitutional right to pass laws protecting children from irreversible transgender medical interventions. It was a 6-3 ruling. The court upheld a Tennessee law prohibiting minors from attempting to medically change their sex. Chief Justice John Roberts delivered the opinion of the court, in which Justices Clarence Thomas, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett joined. Justice Samuel Alito, a George W. Bush appointee, agreed with large parts of the opinion. The court's 3 liberal justices, Sonia Sotomayor, Alina Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, surprisingly dissented. The court held that Tennessee's law satisfied rational basis review, rejecting plaintiffs' claims that the law discriminates against people on the basis of their gender identity. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee, a Republican, signed Bill SB 1, a bill banning puberty blockers, hormone replacement regimens, and transgender surgeries for children into law March 22nd of 2023. Let's all move to Tennessee. It sounds like such a great state. And there's also 23 other states that are enacting laws like this, and they will be able to do so now without impediment. You know, it was trending number 1 on X today. Rothschild. Not just trending number 1 on X, Rothschild. It's time to end the Federal Reserve. Do you know who Viktor Orban is, by the way? He's the president of Hungary. And before we get into this Rothschild thing, here is Orban talking about the dark plan that's taking over the Western world.
The problem is that migration is a concept of changing the society as such. Yeah, it's a kind of replacement of the original native-born voters with somebody else, and this is, without being involved into any conspiracy theory, this is a well-detailed plan of the left. Because, okay, my understanding of the history is probably not as sophisticated as yours, but if I understand correctly, the last 150 years of the European, including UK anyway, the European politics, it's about a competition of 2 tribes. One is those who think that we should stay in the traditional frame and value system of Europe as it was. Nation, freedom, Christianity, that's all.
All right. So there's that. And then also this, again, flowery language, but something you guys may not have seen for a while. This video posted by the royal family just a few years ago.
We have an incredible opportunity to create entirely new sustainable industries, investing in nature as the true engine of our economy.
The current global crisis has disrupted every aspect of our lives, but it has also presented us with an extraordinary opportunity, a chance to reset and accelerate efforts to improve the state of our world.
Changing our current trajectory will require bold and imaginative action, together with determination and decisive leadership. In order to secure our future and to prosper, we need to evolve our economic model, putting people and planet at the heart of global value creation. If there is one critical lesson we have to learn from this crisis, we need to put nature at the heart of how we operate. We are on the verge of catalytic breakthroughs that will alter our view of what is possible and profitable within the framework of a sustainable future. We need nothing short of a paradigm shift, one
sustainable future. It's always about sustainability, isn't it?
That inspires action at revolutionary levels and pace. We simply cannot waste any more time. The only limit is our willingness to act. And the time to act is now.
Oh, look at that. There's the UN 2030 agenda symbol right there. Sustainability. All right. Let me throw this back up here for a second. Rothschild trending #1 on X today. Time to end the Federal Reserve. You guys know that story about the Federal Reserve in 1913? Shocking history you were never told. Benjamin Franklin on the real cause of the War of Independence. It was the Rothschild banking takeover of their money in England. Now, again, this is, I have to say this for the record, again, for all the YouTube and Facebook algorithms out there that may disagree with it and may think I'm stating this as fact. I'm throwing this out there as an opinion. What was the real reason for the Revolutionary War? Very interesting. Not what you were taught in school. The real reason for the Revolutionary War? Well, let's watch this guy. Seems to have a pretty good handle on it.
Who owned America to start with, or the part that was under English rule? The king. It was his own personal property. And he could license you to be able to get minerals and do this and do that as long as you paid your fair share. But the king literally owned the whole country, other than what France owned in Spain and those kind of things. He owned it. There's an interesting thing about France, though, that you're going to see in a minute. Revolutionary War. What was the real reason for the Revolutionary War? Very interesting. Not what you were taught in school. Real reason for the Revolutionary War. Here's a few quotes from William Manley German in a speech to the House of Commons, December 1913. The Rothschilds Bank caused a bill to be introduced in the English Parliament, which provided that no colony of England could issue its own money. Thus, they had to use English money. The colonies were compelled to discard their money and mortgage themselves to the Rothschilds Bank of England to get money. Then, for the first time in the history of the United States, money began to be based on debt. Benjamin Franklin stated that in 1 year from that date, the streets of the colonies were filled with the unemployed. Franklin later claimed this was the real cause of the War of Independence. He said the colonies, we heard it was the Tea Act, right? Things like tea tax and stuff. The colonies would gladly have, this is according to Benjamin Franklin, the colonies would gladly have borne the little tax on tea and other matters had it not been that England and the Rothschilds Bank took away from the colonies their money, which created unemployment, dissatisfaction, and debt. And that is the real cause, folks, of the war. Next thing that I want to talk about real quick is something called the Definitive Treaty. We heard this nasty rumor that we won the Revolutionary War. Ain't true. We did not win it. The last battle that was fought, Cornwallis surrendered the battle, not the war. Proof? About 1 year ago, this document, which I just threw on the floor, came into the country. It was brought in by some folks that I know. It's called the Definitive Treaty of Peace between Great Britain and the United States, signed at Paris, 3 September 1783. It had never been in this country before that. This is what really, really, really happened. You think there was a war? Nah, read this. Listen to this. And again, I've got this stuff available for anybody that wants to look at it later. Here's an introduction. It having pleased the divine providence to dispose the hearts of the most serene and most potent prince. This is somebody that lost a battle is a most potent prince? I don't think so. George III, by the grace of God, listen to this. Here's his titles. King of Great Britain. France. Who did we borrow the money from that helped us win the war? We thought France. Now we owe that money to the King of England? Interesting. Ireland, defender of the faith, Duke of Brunswick and Lunenburg, arch-treasurer and prince-elector of the Holy Roman Empire, treasurer of the Catholic Church, positions all over, etc. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. What happens is we start looking then at who are the parties to the treaty. We find out the parties to the treaty is this guy named John Adams, comma, Esquire. Does anybody know where you go get an Esquire title? England. I don't think we gave them out. Benjamin Franklin, Esquire. John Jay, Esquire. These were all people who were titled nobility in England, who were negotiating this treaty. And do you know what the treaty really said? The treaty really said it's agreed that everything that England and the people of England and the king and whoever else owned and any obligations that existed before this treaty are still law. The king still owns it. The king still owed all the money. Nothing changed except we could govern ourselves theoretically as long as we paid the rent. Where did that show up in the Constitution? This document actually required us to form a constitution, so we did. And so, where did it show up in the Constitution? Here's a couple places. Section 10. States shall pass no law impairing the obligation of contracts. Oh, so we still owe the money, so the land's still the king's. That's right in the Constitution. Snuck that one by you. Or grant any title of nobility, which means the king is still the one that puts all the esquires on all the names of the people who still carry them around in this country and call themselves Americans.
Very interesting food for thought there. One more thing before we go to the extension from the Toronto Sun just a couple of hours ago. Remember I was talking about the fact that there's all kinds of Iranians already in the United States and Canada? Hundreds of the Ayatollah's people already in Canada and more hoping to sneak in. Well, Iranian Canadians cheer for fundamentalist regime to fall. They and the Jewish organizations fear IRGC thugs will be seeking refuge in Canada. Or maybe they're here for a different reason altogether. That's it for the show tonight, you guys. The extension coming up in just a couple of minutes on shadowdavis.com. I love you all. I appreciate you all. And I will talk to you again tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Central. Bye for now.